Your hearts are full, right? We've been encouraged. Let me share a couple thoughts, and I'll do this very quickly. And then one thought that I want to just linger on because I like it a lot. How do you find God in transitions? Not just this one, but your own. And anytime God takes his people through transition, there are three phases. Number one, the phase of dying. The phase of dying. Jesus speaks about it over and over again. John 12, verse 24 says, "Very truly I tell you, unless a kernel of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it only remains a single seed. But if it dies, it produces many seeds." That's a promise. When things die, it produces many seeds. And you and I are like the disciples. They never liked things dying. When Jesus got close to talk about dying, they started pushing back. What are you talking about? You're going to die. You're not going to die. I mean, at one point, Peter gets in Jesus' grill and says, like, "Over my dead body." And Jesus is like, no, get behind me, Satan. You're acting like my arch enemy right now. Get behind me, Satan. Like, you won't get in my way of dying. Dying is fundamental, right? We have seasons, and unless we die. Here's a phrase that has been on my mind, and I didn't tell anybody about it because I don't like to be wrong. But I felt like the Spirit of God was telling me months and months and months ago this phrase: "He must become greater, and I must become less." That was like personal to me. As if God maybe was preparing me to step back. And I thought it was actually about Jeff. I didn't tell him that. I didn't tell my wife that. I didn't tell anybody that because I don't want to be wrong. But it might not be about Jeff. Maybe it's about Chris. But it seems to just be a word for me that God gave me. He must become greater. I must become less. This was John the Baptist talking about Jesus. And so that's true for us too, right? We must become less is the pattern of following the Jesus way. It's not I must become greater, it's I must become less. And I love that Jesus says that that's kind of the way to greatness is to be the servant of all. We die to things, and Jesus leads us into that path of dying to things. Because and when you're dying, here's the temptation. So in each one of these phases, there's a temptation that comes. And then the dying phase, it's to hold on, to cling to. Because in your dying to spiritual things, in your bearing the cross, God is removing the things that you are clinging to. So in Joshua 22 verse 5, listen to what he says. Joshua says this: "But be very careful to keep the commandment and the law that Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave you, to love the Lord your God, to walk in obedience to him, to keep his commands. Hold fast to him." Another version says, "Cling to him." He is the only thing that he wants you to cling to. Jesus is the only thing he wants your soul to cling to. He will work relentlessly at removing the things in your life that you are clinging to other than him. The Old Testament calls those things idols. In Hebrews it says, throw off the very things that entangle you, the things that you are clinging to. So in the act of dying, the temptation is to hold on. And Jesus is saying, let go. Because those things, I can't stand that you cling to anything else other than me. And it's a beautiful thing, but it's really hard to embrace. The second phase of finding God in transitions, actually Psalm 63 verse 8 has a great beautiful verse. It says, "I cling to you, and your strong right hand holds me securely." Yeah. Second phase is waiting after you die to things that you've clung to, good things sometimes even. There's a season of waiting. And so we're a little bit in that season of waiting right now as a church, waiting to see what's next. It's a season of uncertainty. It might feel like a cloud. You might feel unclear. Saul, when he found the Lord on the road to Damascus, went blind for a couple days. I imagine that must have been a weird season of waiting, of being walked by the hand, having someone else lead you. Moses had to wait 40 years. Joseph waited in prison 13 some years. Abraham waited 80 years or so to have a baby. And guess what? There's a temptation. The temptation in the season of waiting is to jump off the cross. So we have a theology of the cross. It's the cross that shapes and forms us. The cross, we die. We are people who die to ourselves daily. We die to the things that we're clinging to. We follow the way of Jesus. And Jesus' last temptation on the cross was those mockers, those people that were spitting at him, hurling insults at him, and says, if you truly are the Son of God, come down from the cross. Jump off the cross. That was like the last temptation. I mean, he was in pain, in misery, about to bear the weight of the whole world on his shoulders, waiting for his time, waiting for this. He's dying. He's not yet dead. And he is waiting. And here's the temptation. Jump off the cross. And it's a temptation for you too. While you are dying and while you're awaiting, if you don't wait long enough for the new life, for the new birth, if you rush it, the temptation is to jump off the cross. It's too painful. I don't know. I'm too uncertain. You're going to have an Ishmael. See, Abraham didn't wait for the promise of Isaac. He went ahead and had sex with his maidservant. Sarah said, go for it. We can't wait for this. And they had an Ishmael. It was not the promised son. You'll have something, but it won't be what God promised you. And it'll cause a mess. So, in the season of waiting, don't jump off the cross. And while you're in the season of waiting, find counsel. It's easy to just listen to your own voice. Here, I got a couple verses. Psalm 27, verse 14 says, wait for the Lord. Be strong. Take heart. Wait for the Lord. That's one of the hardest things to do. That's why these words are in there. You got to be strong to wait for the Lord. You got to be strong to stay on the cross. You have to take heart. Psalm 130 verse 5 says, I wait for the Lord. My whole being waits. And in this word, I put my hope. So this is a time of hoping and waiting. Oh, some of you have to wait a long time. Keep waiting. Take heart. The Lord is with you. He's for you. Mark 15 verse 32 is the part where it says this. It says, let the Messiah, this King of Israel, come down from his cross that we may see and believe. And those crucified with him also heaped insults on him. Nobody might even join you in the waiting. Just wait, just wait. Don't jump off the cross. Don't jump off the cross. And then the last phase. So 3 phases of finding God in transitions. Number 1, die. Embrace it. Number 2, wait. Wait on the Lord. Number 3, we are people of resurrection. We are people of new life. New creation, new wine, new wineskin. The promised land comes to those who wait. There are good things that are coming for you when you wait on the Lord. New creation, new wine, new wineskin. The resurrection. The same Spirit that raised Jesus from the dead is going to raise you to new life in your season of dying, in our season of dying and waiting. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1 says this, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders, everything that we cling to, the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race that is set before us. Here's the temptation when the new thing comes. The temptation is that you will forget the season of dying, the season of waiting. The Israelites, when they got to the promised land, they forgot who got them there in the first place. And they went back to their old ways. It's crazy that you could even die to those things and go back to your old ways. Peter did it over and over again, right? Peter would confront Jesus, Jesus would rebuke him, and then later Peter is getting corrected again, forgetting everything that Jesus has done. Here, Psalm 106, verse 13. Psalm 106, verse 13 says, yet how quickly they forgot what he had done. They wouldn't wait for his counsel. So, I think the longer you wait, the less you're apt to forget. But don't forget. What we did today was remember. This is good. Don't forget And then I just want to close with this little story about Peter. It says in John chapter 13, we don't have all these verses up there, Soren, so just listen to me. It said, Jesus knew that the time had come. We know that this time had come, right? Jesus knew that the time had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. I love that. How cool would it be if we were so keenly aware that we just knew things? Like there could be a level of confidence in this moment right now, but you know what? I know that our time has come. Jesus went to the cross with such confidence, assurance. He knew that the time has come. And it says, having loved his own who were in the world, he now showed them the full extent of his love. The evening meal was being served. The devil had already prompted Judas Iscariot, son of Simon, to betray Jesus. And Jesus knew that he had put all things under his Father. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and returned to God. Three things right in a row. Jesus knows his identity is in God. He knows God's plan for him, God's purpose for him. And then look at what happens next. Because of all these things, it seems like now Jesus is able, he gets up from the evening meal, he puts a cloth around his waist, he gets a bowl and a basin, and he goes behind the disciples and he starts washing their feet. And he gets to Peter, and Peter is like, Lord, you're not going to wash my feet, are you? And Jesus says these amazing words. You can put those on the screen. John chapter 13, verse 7. Jesus replies, you do not realize now what I'm doing, but later you will understand. Is there something going on in your life right now that you don't really understand? I believe Jesus' promise for his disciples are this. You do not realize now what I'm doing, but later you will understand. And Jesus is referring to him washing Peter's feet. And Peter like, no, no, no. And Jesus is like, look, if I don't wash your feet, then you have no part with me. And Peter says, well, then I'll take a shower. Give me a bath in your water. Jesus says something profound here. Peter, you don't understand what I'm doing right now, but one day you're going to realize. And I believe that promise is true for us. As Christ followers, when we follow him into death, when we follow him into waiting, the promise is one day later, although you do not realize now what you're going through or what God is doing, one day you will understand. And here, Jesus is talking about his death. He's talking about his resurrection. He's talking about the place of being a servant. Because what Jesus did that day to wash his disciples' feet was unprecedented. No place in recorded history did anybody of that kind of authority get down on that level that was for slaves to wash the feet of this century's people whose feet were so dirty, so nasty, that as you walked into a house, somebody had to wash your feet in order for you to go about your business and whatever you're doing in that house. Jesus took the place of a servant. He took the place of a slave for you and me. I don't think we always realize what Jesus did for us. One day we're really going to truly come to know. But I think we get to know that more when we're in the times of transitions. As a matter of fact, if you look back in all your stages of life, where you have grown the most in your relationship with Jesus, in those times of transitions, where you've died to something and you've waited on the Lord for that new thing to come. So, if you don't realize it now, that's okay. One day, we're all going to realize what God is doing, what God has really done. So don't grieve. Don't be sad too long. Rejoice, because Jesus has overcome the world, and he has a plan and a purpose